Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dean Forgio, and I am the host of a brand new podcast called The Performers I Know. For those of you who are not aware, I am the founder and director of the Vagabond Repertory Theater Company. And for the past 5 or 6 years, I've done several uh, stage and virtual shows, and I have worked with a great number of performers, young and old, and the this podcast is essentially here to document and talk to the various performers that I've had the pleasure of working with since the inception of the Vagabond Repertory Theater Company. And the very first person that I will be interviewing for this first episode is a gentleman that I've known for almost half of my life by the name of Michael Riley. But I don't want to give too much away. So stay tuned. In just a moment, we're going to be starting episode 1 of The Performers I Know, coming right at you. These are the performers I know. 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 Hello, everybody. Welcome to the premiere episode of The Performers I Know. For this very first episode, I figured why not have as the very first guest a performer that I've known longest. For nearly 20 years, I have been friends with this man through thick and thin and through all sorts of shenanigans, like that one time we robbed a bank in Tallahassee. You remember that?
That was
Or,
supposed to be on the down low.
well, statute of limitations, it's okay.
Oh,
Or
that's
that
fair.
time we beat up Krusty the Clown. You remember that, right? That was
Yeah, but he
fun.
deserved it. He was picking on three little kids.
It was true. Poor Bart and Lisa and Moogie. All around good stuff. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, my very first guest is the one and only Mr. Michael Riley.
Hello, everybody.
Yes. Now, normally Mike is the host of projects and I'm just his little tag along, but now the roles are reversed. So now you know how it feels, Mike, to be in my shoes. You bow down to me. You do what I no, it's okay. It's fine. Everything's okay. I'll do
Would
what
you
you.
like me to? Would you like me to shine your shoes?
No, that's ridiculous. I have socks on.
Would you like me to shine your socks?
Yeah, shine, shine my socks if you could see yourself clear.
Yes.
So the first question that I tend to want to ask all of my guests going forward is it's kind of a question that Mike can sort of answer because you what I want to ask people is how did you get into acting and theater in general? But the thing that you have to remember though, ladies and gentlemen, is that Mike is technically not a theater person. He has done acting, he hosts things, so he has that kind of experience, but he's not an actor by nature. So I guess in order to kind of switch the question up a little bit, what got you into performing, say?
Well, I always used to watch Whose Line Is It Anyway when I got home from school on weeknights. It was right after Kids in the Hall, as a matter of fact, on Comedy Central. So That would be my 1-2 punch when I get home from high school. Is I get home, turn on the TV, watch Kids in the Hall, watch the British version of Who's Line, and that pretty much got me into comedy and improv in and of itself. Um, I started performing improv right after that in chat rooms, which is where I met Dane. And
Yes, because once upon a time, about 176,000 years ago,
yes,
Mike had a improv job. Was it called Mertz Line? Is it anyway, or was that a?
Mertz. Yeah, Mertz line is it anyway was what it was called. Yeah,
Mm,
because my online screen name was P_Merton, after Paul Merton, one of my favorite performers from the British version of Who's Line. And just the show ended up being named after me. Um,
you
that's
know,
not even the show that I started with. I started with a Who's Line online group before I even met the people at Idiot Site. But so like my first improv experience came with a whole completely different group of people. But I was very young. I was 16, 17, I think, something like that. I was super inexperienced and it kind of showed. And I wish the chat logs were still up on the internet somewhere. They might be via like Internet Archive, but I don't really know. But you can tell in some of those chat logs that I'm not very experienced at it.
just a smidgen on the inexperienced side, as
Yeah,
I was as well. I got to be honest with you. I have no earthly idea how I even stumbled upon Idiot Site or Merch Line is it anyway. All I remember is I just went, "Hey, a role playing. I'm using air quotes here. Uh, game dedicated to Whose Line Is It Anyway. I like Whose Line Is It Anyway.
yeah,
I'll just go on and join it." And that is exactly what I did. And Mike and I became very good friends early, from a very early on standpoint. Um,
indeed,
and it transitioned a couple of years later into Mike's wonderful podcast called The Mental Cast. Now, how did you come up with the idea for doing the Mental Cast?
so funny enough, that actually started even before we started recording it as the Menocast. We were doing a weekly recap show for my wrestling organization, AWA, the Anarchy Wrestling Association. It was called the Anarchast, and it was a show that was recorded by me and my friend Chris McLean, who, if you've listened to the Menocast, you know he was a huge part in the early goings of that show. Um, After about 3 episodes of Anarchast, in which most of the time we spent talking about anything but wrestling, we were just like, well, why don't we just do this? But we do it with pop culture. We talk about movies and music and television and video games. And I was like, well, let's just do that. And my production company is called Mental Studios. You can find it on YouTube. So we just named it the Mental Cast, and I was just like, well, let's just do that. And for the first 2 months of that show's life, it was literally just me and Chris McLean recording for half an hour to an hour every week. Eventually, we brought in about 3 months in my girlfriend at the time, Taylor, and then Dane came in, and everything just ballooned up from there.
I feel like I was like episode 8 was
You came in, I believe it was episode 18
18.
was
Okay,
your very first episode. It was
I
early in 2008.
yeah. And if anybody ever listens to those recordings, I had a really shitty microphone. It was like
Well,
it
I'll
was
be
like
honest, we all did. We all did in those days. I was recording Chris literally off of a telephone. I had a telephone mic'd up and was recording him through that. Like I had no concept of like Skype or any kind of like voice program that we could have used to do it. Like it was early days. Again, we had very little idea what we were doing. Um, and you can't. The honest thing is like your first anything isn't going to be that good. Like you have to start doing like terribly before you can do better. Like
Yeah, that's well, if that's the case, then I started off super terribly. So everything just going up from there. Because
yeah.
I sounded like a Burger King drive-through, like, oh, oh, Mark, that's a funny joke. And I listened to these first recordings, and I just remember I called mine Mike the big, just the big wiener, because that's really what it looked like. It was just a very thin, very crappy looking mic, and I'm just like, oh
The thin wiener.
yeah, like it was pretty bad. I think I spent like $5 on that damn thing.
And then it turned out you didn't even need it because like there was like an episode a month later where you were just talking to your family randomly, and we was like, we can hear you, Dane. I'm like, I don't even have the
Well,
mic plugged
the
in.
ex
Is what
I like telling this story. So
go for it.
I was we were setting up to record an episode of the Mental Cast. It was me, Mike, and Taylor.
Yes.
And as we were setting up, my mom came walking in, and we were talking about some family party we were having that weekend. So we're talking for about 90 seconds, and then she walked
I am
out.
surprised you remember what you were talking about, considering that was 15 years ago now.
Pretty much. So as I turned back, I hear Mike go, Dane, is your mic on by any chance? No. Why? Because we just heard everything that you said crystal clearly. You mean to tell me I haven't needed a microphone this whole time
You mean to tell me I bought a thin wiener for no reason?
for no reason? For some reason, I turned into Brad Garrett in that moment. I didn't need a microphone.
Raymond, I didn't need a microphone,
Raymond,
Raymond.
God damn it, Raymond. So it was at that moment that I hucked that piece of garbage into the trash can. Whoop, and we proceeded to do several million episodes of the Mental Cast. Or
almost almost 500 we did of the mental, almost 500 episodes across a little over 10 years. We stopped at the 10-year anniversary, which would have been 2017, and then we actually came back the next year and did about 20 more video form. We switched over to video form, so um
yes.
yeah,
And
almost 500 episodes.
in the meantime, Mike also dipped his toes into the video game let's play markets. Well, not exactly like game
um
grumps per se, but
it
he
was
would
it was live stream video gaming, which was when I started doing it, it was fairly new. This we're talking like this is 2012 ish. I had
mm,
just come back to Ohio from I had lived in Texas for a few years,
yes.
and we had just finished up shooting a series called Culture Shock, which Dane was also a part of. Um, and we did a lot of video gaming on that. There was a segment on that called Backseat Gamer. If you're wondering where the show Backseat Gamer comes from, that's where it comes from. It was a segment on Culture Shock that it got spun off into its own show. Uh, and I just like playing video. I do like really playing video games. I still do. Um, and live streaming was a fairly new thing at the time, and I thought, well, let's try out my hand at that. And early goings of that was the the live stream quality wasn't that great because my computer was a potato, so it I couldn't even have people on the call with me in the early days because it would just chug everything.
It's
So there were
true.
the early days.
Mike literally played Super Mario Brothers on a potato. It was very, very strange. I mean,
Yeah,
I've heard that you can run Doom on everything. What, a potato? It's
you
amazing.
probably could if you try hard enough. You probably could.
Yeah.
But I remember we did the very first or second game that we ever played was Link's Awakening for the Game Boy, and I remember that being on the call by myself for the whole show because I couldn't have anybody else on there because the stream would lag. It would really mess up, and there was nothing we could do about it in those days. But fortunately, that got better on as I was able to upgrade equipment, and MVG Live was another show that we did for a long, long time, from 2012 to 2020, as a matter of fact. We stopped right before the pandemic happened, to do Backseat Gamer instead. So yeah,
Hmm.
we did that show for 8 years, and that was a whole lot of fun. And I actually recently found some old VODs of that I thought were lost forever from the later periods of MVG Live. So I was very
Yeah.
happy to find
The
those.
long lost footage is
Yeah,
finally not lost.
yeah. So you might see some of those because we have a thing called Backseat Gamer Memory Card now on my
Yeah.
channel where I cut down and air older episodes. So you might see some of that stuff soon.
Yes. Now, speaking of the pandemic, so
Mm.
as a little bit of background, at the time, I had been doing my Vagabond Repertory Theater Company group for since roughly the middle of 2018. And
Yes,
when the pandemic hit, I'm saying to myself, "Oh my God, I'm ruined. Like, what am I going to do?" And it occurred to me, like, wait a minute, everyone's doing virtual stuff now. Why don't I just do that? So we chugged along, singing a song, going on our merry little way. Mike actually started off, he was the quote unquote narrator for a few of our shows,
hmm
basically reading the stage direction so people knew what the hell was going on.
yes, indeed.
Um, yes, I actually don't think you
I believe
properly.
I believe I was the narrator for the very first thing I did for you was I was the narrator for the Young Sherlock Holmes. The very first time you guys did that one, because I know you guys have gone back to it. But yeah, I was the narrator for the very first one, which was, I believe,
Yeah,
the first
you
digital
were,
production.
and you also for The Witches in the Woods, which was our
Yes,
second one.
that was the second one. Yep.
And I was, now at the time, I was doing these things live, as in like going live and doing them.
Yeah.
And
On my Twitch channel. Yep, which I allowed you guys to
yeah,
do.
and things were, there were little graphical and audio glitches here and there. Like, and well, the funny thing is, one of the things that I would constantly tell my performers is make sure your mic isn't muted. Make sure you're not muted. And during the very first scene showcase that I did, when I was supposed to be giving stage directions, guess whose mic was muted?
Mr. Dane Forgio.
That this guy right here. You can't see me, but I'm pointing it to
Who has two thumbs and has just made himself look hypocritical. This guy.
this guy right here. And I'm just sitting there like, are they just not listening to me? Like, are they ignoring me? And then it's just like, hey, stupid, your mic is muted. Yeah, all right, cool, cool.
Hey, sometimes you just forget, sometimes you're just used to on a roll and nothing else exists, including the mute button, and you just forget. It
We
happens
act,
sometimes. If you get into a roll real deep, it'll happen.
Me and Mike actually did an improv scene during Scene Showcase 1,
Yes.
mostly out of necessity because I wanted to have 5 segments for the show, and I only had 4. So I'm like, oh crap.
How can
I
I do a segment with as little preparation as
and it's
as
possible.
possible?
Yeah, hey, an improv scene that works.
Hey, me and Michael just do a scene off the top of our heads.
Correct. Not only that, but Mike played a bad guy in the very last scene.
Yeah, I don't remember the character name, but I remember that
Slogutis. Slogutis, the
that's
mythological that I
Yeah, that
literally
was the
did like
one.
5 minutes of research on the whole mythological thing behind that. It's like, sure, okay, cool, you're the bad guy now. Actually, to let you in on a little secret,
Yes.
I was originally supposed to do that, but then it's like, if I'm going to do that scene with Shannon Ship, Daniel, my brother, I'm going to be just emotionally exhausted. So I'm going to just pass this role along to Mike just to give myself like, so I don't give myself a brain aneurysm. And as it
I
turns out,
appreciated it because I enjoy doing things on that level. It's not just improv with me. I enjoy doing like scripted stuff like that. So
yes. And as it turns out, Mike was pretty darn good at it. So as we progressed, um, Mike went from playing one mythological character to another one because he played Santa Claus. Ooh,
yes, No Name the Elf, I believe,
that is
that was
correct.
the title of the digital production, and it wasn't a large role, but it was still a lot of fun to play. I have been known to be jolly and fat, so I'm perfect for the role.
Well, I mean, you're jolly, all right.
Mm, it's true.
Oh,
Ho ho ho.
ho. And it was there that I learned, ladies and gentlemen, that sometimes rehearsing a show way too many times is quite taxing because by the end of that whole process, those kids were just like, dang, it's we're reading off of a script. We don't have to memorize it. Just stop. Yes, you are right, children. I should just
Yeah,
as much
that is
some
true. I feel in an actual theater performance, I could see that being a necessity, especially for somebody like me who has trouble remembering lines like that, which is why I don't do a lot of scripted live. But um, yeah, it for something where you're just reading off the script. Yeah, I get that.
so yeah, that was kind of when I started to lean more towards we don't have to rehearse 25,000 times for a scripted reading of a scene. Yeah, that's all right. So things just progressed from there. And I do have to ask, do you, Mike, sometimes like when I have proposed to you different kind of characters that you play, because on the one hand, you played Santa Claus. On
Hmm.
the other hand, when we did um, later on Ichabod's Ghost, and you played the horrible, evil villain role of the inspector, do you find that sometimes you have to prepare a little bit differently playing a hero to playing a villain, or is it all the same to you sometimes?
Um, it really just it depends on the character. To I'll be honest with you, and the one in Ichabod's Ghost is probably by far so far of all the things I've done for you. That's probably been my favorite. Um, just because I got to like sometimes you just get into a role. And like I said, it depends on the character in terms of preparation. In terms of like how I approach a role. Um, that one in particular, I he was definitely like an evil man. And when he gets his comeuppance at the end, it means something. So you have to I put a lot of emotion into it because that him getting his comeuppance meant something. So I was, and they'll tell you, like Dane will tell you, I was literally screaming some of those lines at the top of my lungs when we were doing the live broadcast. So because it needed it, I felt it deserved the gravitas and the emotion. So
Well, you and Billy Carter and Adam Winkleman kind of approach things differently. I mean, Bill,
yeah, Wonkelman usually approaches them drunk.
well, Hey, listen, that's neither here nor there.
That fair.
Um, Billy just because Billy just played a disgustingly slovenly man, and
How did
his
he prepare for that role? Follow himself around for a year?
oh my, you are so bad. I can't.
I'm sorry. He's better off now. He's lost a lot of weight. He's not a slob. Billy, if you're listening to this, go to bed.
Yeah, it's way past your
It's
bedtime.
past your bedtime.
I mean, and I mean, I don't mean this to be like a derogatory. So, Adam Winkleman, if you're listening to this, even though we are not professionally united anymore, I don't mean this in a bad way. But yeah, your character was meant to be played a certain way, and you went about things in that way, so it kind of worked out in the end. So, you know, that's just the way it is.
There's method acting, and then there's just going too far. But
And then there's just you're playing Peter O'Toole on a good day. Like,
that's
well,
fair.
it's 9 a.m. somewhere.
Right?
Hmm. You mentioned that Ichabod's Ghost was your favorite thing of mine that
Yes.
you did. Um, I tend to disagree,
Oh,
mostly
really?
because I think the segment that we did back in September of 2023, What If I Told You, probably would be my favorite, mostly because that's the first time we really interacted in a scripted format rather than improv.
That is true. And I am taking nothing away from What If I Told You, because I did enjoy the heck out of that. That was a lot of fun, and as is every production I do with Vagabond is a lot of fun to do. Um, we should do that again sometime. Actually, I hope we get to do that again.
I do
Something
I
similar.
I believe so, yes. I mean, you your craft is wrestling and singing.
Hmm.
And two things that I'm not very good at. So it's always interesting to see other people working at a craft that, you may not necessarily be good at. Because I look at all the wrestling stuff that Mike's done, and I'm just sitting there like, I probably couldn't run the ropes without winding myself in like 10 seconds. And yeah,
I
here we
I
go.
can't. I'll be honest with you. I really can't either. But somehow I forged through it.
And as for singing, Mike has several albums to his name. If I
Yes.
tried singing, people would be calling about, we heard there's a dead, dying, or dying cat on the premises. What's going on?
Animal control would be called.
ASPCA would be outside the door.
The neighbors would be looking out the windows, going, "What the hell's going on down here in Staten Island?"
What the hell? People, I don't know, just craziness. But yeah, as we start to wind down a little bit,
I think we're missing a big aspect of us. Should we talk about the actual improv thing we did live?
you know what? Yes,
Because
yes.
so to preface, in the midst of doing the mental cast and MVG Live, but we did the early days of MVG Live. We would occasionally on the mental cast do improv games at the end of the show, um, as we recorded them, and we got so comfortable with each other over the course of doing the mental cast that I decided, well, let's just do an improv show. And at the time, Whose Line Is It Anyway was not airing on television. This was a year, well, it was a few months before the show was announced to come back on the CW. So Dane and I decided to do a show called You Can't Be Serious. Started airing in 2013. Technically hasn't stopped because I still have episodes that haven't aired yet, and you might see those eventually on the channel. Once ever if I ever get time to get around to editing them, they are time consuming to
And
edit.
depending upon when this airs,
Mm-hmm.
you might also, well, not might be, you're most definitely going to be seeing some new stuff too. But stay tuned for that.
Yes. Um, so we did, let's see, it would have been, we did about 3, 4, 5 seasons ish. We had recorded 5 seasons of You Can't Be Serious by 2018. And then sadly I lost my mother in the summer of 2018. So that was a little rough. But at the time that it all was happening, Dane was planning a Who's Line like show for his theater company. For his, well, I don't, was it for your theater company or was it just a separate thing?
It
Uh,
was, well, originally it was going to be for my theater company, um, but mm, I think only one person who was quote unquote in the troupe at the time had a genuine interest in it. Most people either A, didn't have the time, or B, were like, sorry, Dave, but I don't know how to do improv, especially whose line is it anyway type improv. So, mm, so then, I sent feelers out to a couple of different people, like Tom Warner and a couple of other people, nameless goons who I don't want to really speak about because I don't really work professionally with them anymore. And
and that show is a lot of why,
essentially,
unfortunately.
yes.
But
And yeah,
so we fast forward a little bit to uh, so we're talking July now of 2018, and um, Dane's talking about the improv show he's wanting to do, and we're on a call together, and suddenly I'm like, well, I'm inheriting a lot of money from the passing of my mother because of her. She was drawing unemployment, and I'm the beneficiary. So I could afford to, if you want, Dane, I could take a trip out to New York and do the show with you. And at that moment is when it became a You Can't Be Serious show, basically.
I essentially passed the baton to Mike and was like, you know what? You can handle the uh
The writing and
the writing
the
and the aspects.
format.
I
Yeah.
will handle the venue and whatnot. So
So yeah, once I came on board, it was more like me and Dane were working partners rather than him doing everything himself or me doing everything myself, which I then worked out pretty well. And then slowly but surely, after I became a part, a lot of the actual cast members of You Can't Be Serious wanted to take part. So it became this whole big thing. And you need I remind everybody at this point, most of us had only ever seen each other online. I think of everybody involved in that show, the only people I had ever met in person at that up until that point was Billy and Ashley. Those were
yeah,
literally it. I had never met Dane in person. I'd never met any of the other guys in person. This was literally going to be the first time, and it was a really big thing for all of us. We traveled from all over. This was August 31st, I believe, to 2018. We
yeah.
took the trip in to New York.
Mhm.
Ashley, Billy, and I rode together through a giant thunderstorm in Pennsylvania, which made us stop for an hour. So we didn't get to New
You
York until
know,
about 2 o'clock in the
Mike
afternoon.
rode commando in my car.
I have apologized for that profusely on several
Well,
occasions. I don't know how much more times I got to say I'm sorry for putting my booty hole
putting
in your
your
Ultima.
putting your putting your luscious box of berries,
For putting my meat and potatoes so
your
close to
meat and
your interior
potatoes.
leather seats.
Yes, it was. I mean, it was a lot of fun, but like I said, it's kind of marred by the fact that a couple of goons are involved in the projects. whom I would rather not speak about. But I do also realize that it was a lot of fun getting to meet everybody in person for the first time. And
That was kind of the whole point, for the most part. Yes, it was a lot of fun doing the improv in person, and that was part of the reason I wanted to do it. But and that was the part of the reason everybody wanted to do it, I think. But also, I thought a lot of the reason was just we'd all wanted to meet in person. We'd never met, and we got the chance to do that. And we showed up the night of August 31st. We all settled in, did some running around New York City. Dane showed us around Staten Island.
well, it's funny
The
because that morning it was like 7:30, and Mike calls me, and
I
I'm
calls you.
I
Guess who's in New York City, Dane?
you
Robert De Niro.
well, yeah. Even through one bloodshot eye, half asleep, I was making jokes like Robert De Niro.
Yes. Well,
No,
that
it's
might be, but I'm here
yeah.
also. And
Well,
looking back, that was a really stupid question to ask.
it was a very
Like, who
I should
else
have
could it possibly be?
I could have reached through the phone and slapped it at you, but I did not.
Yeah,
Well,
you should have.
hmm
And
looking
then
at the old,
a bunch of us got like really drunk later that night, and that's like one of the very few times in my life that I've actually been drunk. Like, was that
hmm,
night. Yeah, so
well,
that's what meeting everybody did to me. No, I'm kidding. And then
well,
we went
looking,
sightseeing in Times Square the next day, and then half of our group ended up being late to the actual theater performance. Uh, so that was a good thing. But the show went off great. It's on YouTube somewhere. It'll probably get re-aired on YouTube somewhere real soon.
it's on your channel. It's literally on one of your old channels.
It's one of my old channels, but I need to grab it and upload it to the new one, the
Mm.
current one. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I don't regret it. I would do it again.
Well, looking at the old clock on the wall, it is just about time for us to wrap up this premiere episode. Um, I do want to sincerely thank Mike Riley for being here. Mike, I know we've had our ups and downs, just like Huey Lewis said,
Mm.
but in the grand scheme of things, I can't think of a person that would rather have such a long history with and be one of my very best friends in the world. So thank you very much for being here.
Hey, you know me. You don't need money. You don't need fame.
No. Oh
You don't
well,
even need a credit card to ride this
in
train.
that case, then the band's breaking up. I'm sorry.
It's strong, but it's sudden.
It's true.
But it might just change your life. It's the power of friendship.
Love. But you know, yes, it's true. I'm glad to be stuck with you.
Yeah, it's hip to be square.
Climbing Jacob's ladder?
uh,
Well,
uh,
in any event, as the intro plays us out, I will say thank you very much to Mike, and I will see you guys next time. Have a good one, folks.
Bye.
These are the performers I know. These are the performers I know. These are the performers I know. These are the performers I know.